On a night when the rain falls softly or a deep fog blankets the path where not even moonlight can reach. Have you ever stopped in your tracks at the faint sound of a baby crying from somewhere in the darkness? If the source of that voice were a woman standing alone in the shadows, holding a blood-stained garment and pleading for your help, what would you do? She might not be just a lost mother, but a yokai known as ubume, a spirit who left this world with a powerful lingering attachment. Tonight, let us take the time to unravel the story of this sorrowful yokai and the deep psychological distress she represents, which still resonates with many of us today. The existence of the ubumi has been recorded since ancient times in various regions of Japan, and even in Chinese folklore. Her form is sometimes described as a beautiful woman, and at other times as a terrifying bird of prey. Most famously, she appears as a woman wearing a robe, stained red from the waist down, cradling a small child. In the past, the act of giving birth was an event that truly risked one's life. Behind the miracle of bringing a new soul into the world, many women lost their lives before they could fulfill their journey. It is said that the intense attachment of these women, their longing to hold and raise their children, took shape as the yokai ubume. Here, I would like to ask you a question. Have you ever experienced a deep regret over not being able to protect someone precious, or an attachment that you simply could not let go of? If that feeling were strong enough to surpass your own life, what form would your soul take? The story of the ubume is not just a tale of the past. It may be a reflection of the deep-seated love and shadows that reside in any human heart. Among the legends of the ubume, the story of the stone baby has terrified people for generations. While walking a lonely road at night, a woman suddenly appears and begs you to hold her child for just a moment. Sensing her distress and wanting to help, you take the infant into your arms and the woman vanishes. However, as time passes, the baby becomes unbelievably heavy. What felt as light as a feather at first begins to sink into your arms, eventually becoming as heavy as a massive boulder. You might find yourself forced to your knees, desperately praying or chanting for the sun to rise. When the morning light finally breaks and you look down at your arms, you find not a child, but a cold stone or a pile of withered leaves. What does this description of a baby growing heavier signify? Many believe it represents the invisible weight of responsibility that a mother carries, the pressure of guarding a life, and the guilt of being unable to fulfill that duty. These women may have simply wanted someone to share that overwhelming emotion, or perhaps they wanted to etch the proof that their child truly existed into the arms of another. If we look at historical records like the Wakan Sansai Zue, an encyclopedia from the Edo period, the ubum is also depicted as a frightening bird that steals children. Flying over the roofs of houses at night, she is said to leave drops of her poisonous blood on laundry left outside. Any child who wore those clothes would fall ill or be snatched away by the ubume. Why would she target the children of others? It may be that the void left by losing her own child transformed into a distorted sense of envy, or a loneliness that could not bear to see the happiness of others. This mirrors the silent isolation some parents feel today when they struggle with child rearing, while seeing only the happy faces of other families. Have you ever felt crushed by the pressure to be a perfect parent? There is a theory that the ubume is actually a personification of the unstable mental state, known as postnatal distress or depression, the feeling of not being able to love one's child, the lack of confidence in raising them, or the urge to simply disappear. Those silent cries of the heart may have reached the ears of people in the past, as the fluttering wings of a mysterious bird in the night. Furthermore, the fact that the ubume is often depicted in blood-stained clothing is deeply connected to the social background of the time. In the past, the blood associated with childbirth was often treated as something to be feared or avoided due to cultural taboos. It was even believed that a woman who departed this world while still carrying a child would be unable to find peace. To save their souls, families would perform rituals, such as placing a doll in the casket to help them let go of their attachments. The terrifying appearance of the ubum was a symbol of the irrational prejudice and fear that women of that era were forced to endure. Now let me ask you another question. If a sorrowful ubum appeared before you, how would you respond? Would you flee in terror, or would you wish to lighten the burden she carries, even if only a little? In the stories of the Ubume, there are also tales of mysterious salvation. There is a story of a man who was asked to hold a baby and endured its growing weight until dawn. For his bravery and compassion, he was granted incredible physical strength. This suggests that those who overcome the grueling trials of parenting and responsibility through the support of others and their own mental fortitude can grow significantly as human beings. The message hidden behind this ghost story might be one of hope that suffering and pressure can be transformed into true strength once they are transcended. However, the Ubum of the modern era still hides among us in different forms. For instance, the voices on social media or internet forums crying out about the hardships and regrets of parenting. Those voices are the modern equivalent of the Ubum's wings. Mothers who are isolated, facing their children in closed rooms and blaming themselves. The weight in their hearts grows heavier every moment, much like the stone baby in the legend. If that weight becomes too much to bear, their hearts too might fly away to somewhere far, far away. The legend of the Ubum confronts us with the preciousness of life and, at the same time, the social indifference toward the sorrow that falls through the cracks of that process. By creating the concept of a yokai, people of the past gave form to unexplainable tragedies and the shadows of the mind attempting to face them. The rituals to comfort the Ubum were not only for the departed, but were also a form of community care to soothe the anxieties of living mothers. As we reach the heart of the story, the true wish of the Ubume becomes clear. In some regions, it was tradition to build small shrines, where the Ubum was said to appear, offering warm milk or sweets. What they wanted was likely not to take a life, but simply to be recognized as a mother and to have their struggles acknowledged. To take off the blood-stained robes and sleep peacefully as a woman. That may be the only salvation the Ubum has sought for hundreds of years. What did you feel as you listened to this story of the Ubume? It is more than just a scary tale. It is filled with heartbreakingly human emotions. Yokai are mirrors of ourselves. The attachments and anxieties held by the Ubum exist, in some form within our own hearts today. If we can listen to their cries not as paranormal phenomena, but as the voices of neighbors seeking help, the darkness of the night path might be touched by a gentle light. If you see a parent nearby who looks exhausted, as if they are carrying a heavy stone alone, please remember this story. The shadow of the Ubum might be drawing near to them. What can dispel that shadow is not an exorcism, but your simple words of support or a helping hand. The sound of the Ubum's wings may still be echoing in the sky somewhere tonight. It is a warning and at the same time a prayer for help. As long as we do not forget the spirit of sharing and listening, this sorrowful yokai will one day surely become a gentle bird and fly away into the distant sky. I hope this story has helped you deepen your understanding of the spiritual depth of Japanese yokai and the circumstances women faced in the past. The Ubum is not a relic of the past. She is a story of love and suffering that seeks to be born in someone's heart even at this very moment. If you have any local legends about the Ubum, mysterious stories of spirits of motherhood, or your own experiences, please share them in the comments. Your words might be a small light that saves someone shivering in loneliness right now. On this channel, we will continue to explore stories that delve into the depths of humanity, hidden behind Japanese yokai and urban legends. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe and give us a high rating. Until next time, when the door to another story opens, please watch your step on the night path. Hello, everyone! In Japanese folklore and legends, Oni appear almost without fail. With horns, sharp fangs, and tiger-skin loincloths, they are terrifying figures. But would you believe me if I told you that these Oni once actually existed? The image of the frightening monster we know today may just be a construct created by those in power. This is a record of those who were defeated and erased from history, never to appear in textbooks. Today, we will dive deep into the true identity of those who were called Oni and pushed into the darkness of history. What do you imagine when you hear the word Oni? Most of you probably think of a red ogre or a blue ogre living in the mountains. However, looking at ancient documents, the original meaning of the word Oni was slightly different. In ancient times, the word is said to have come from Onu, meaning to hide. It referred to invisible beings or those who hid from the world. Why did they eventually have to be depicted as monsters? I want to ask you a question. Who do you think writes history? The answer is always the victors, the side that wins the battle. and gains power records history to justify their legitimacy. If so, what happens to those who were defeated? They were labeled as Oni and driven into the darkness of history as beings that were not human. First, let's look at the entities called Tsuchigumo. In ancient history, books like the Kojiki and Nihon Shoki, monsters, called Tsuchigumo appear, resisting the emperor's army. They are described as long-limbed, dwelling in pits, and terrifyingly cunning. In reality, they are thought to have been indigenous peoples or local clans who refused to submit to the Yamato court. During the process of national unification, they fought to protect their land, but to the court, they were eerie existences that would not obey. By recording them as spider-like monsters, the court justified their elimination. How do you feel about the fact that people who were just trying to protect their homes are passed down as monsters? The legend of Shutendoji, the king of Oni, also has a fascinating background. Though he is said to have committed atrocities in the capital of Kyoto, one theory suggests he was the leader of a group that built its own society, deep in the mountains of Tanba. They accepted people fleeing from heavy taxes, those who fell through the cracks of the system, and perhaps even people from overseas. For the rulers of the time, the existence of a powerful, uncontrollable group nearby was a major threat. Thus, under the pretext of demon slaying by Minamoto, Raiko and his men, their base was attacked. It is said they used poison sake to incapacitate the Oni before attacking. Does this not seem cowardly for a hero of justice? The words Shutendoji left, that there is no foul play among Oni, seem to be a strong irony toward the winners who used such dirty tactics. Next, let's look at the story of Momotaro from a different perspective. This story, where Momotaro goes to Onigashima to defeat the Oni and bring back treasure, is seen by some as a glorification of overseas expeditions or the conquest of indigenous groups within Japan. For example, there is a legend of Oni named Ura in Okayama. Ura was said to be a prince from Bekye, who brought ironworking technology to Japan and made the region prosperous. However, the court feared his power and sent Kibitsuiko no Mikoto to eliminate him. Ura is a strong candidate for the model of the Oni in Momotaro. What he protected was the cutting edge, iron technology, and the rich resources it brought. Could the treasures Momotaro brought back have been the looted technology and resources? Behind the hero story lies a history of invasion and appropriation. Consider the horns, fangs, and red skin that symbolize Oni. There is a theory that these symbolize people of a specific profession, blacksmiths, who performed Tatara ironworking. They lived in the mountains, manipulated fire, and produced iron. Their skin was scorched red from the intense flames, and their figures were sturdy from swinging heavy hammers. Their monopoly on iron gave them great power, and they were not to be underestimated by the rulers. The fear and respect for their technology may have transformed into a belief in Oni. To the villagers, their tools, the smoke from the forge, and their unique rituals might have looked like terrifying supernatural phenomena. Do you know the Namahage, the traditional event in Akita? With their cries of, "Are there any bad children?" They are the image of Oni. However, besides being messengers of the gods from the mountains, there is a theory that they were actually foreigners who washed ashore from the continent. People who spoke an unknown language, wore unfamiliar clothes, and had different facial features were recognized as Oni from the mountains. Though initially feared, they eventually brought new culture and wisdom to the community and became guardian-like figures. Thus, Oni was also a word symbolizing the other, the stranger, who exceeded one's understanding. Tracing the darkness of history further, we encounter the Emishi of the north. Led by the hero Adarui, they fiercely resisted the court's invasion and were feared as Oni or demons. Their superior horsemanship and unique tactics tormented the court's army. Because of their strength, the nobles of the time thought they were demons in human form. Adarui eventually surrendered in hopes of peace, trusting Sakanoe no Tamuramaru, but he was sent to the capital, where the promise was broken and he lost his life. The fact that such proud warriors were turned into wretched demons to be defeated in stories is one of the greatest distortions in history. I have a second question for you. If a group of people you've never seen wearing clothes, you've never seen and speaking a language you don't understand, suddenly appeared in your town, how would you react? We strive to accept diversity today, but to ancient people, The unknown might have been nothing but an object of pure fear. That fear created the form of the Oni and the politics of the time, used it as a justification to eliminate enemies. This is one aspect of the true identity of the Oni. The spread of Buddhism also played a large part in solidifying the image of the Oni as the jailers of hell who torture sinners. With this, the Oni became a complete symbol of evil. Beings that were originally land deities or resistant humans were rewritten into something wicked in a religious context. This served as a tool of fear, suggesting that those who rebelled against the court would become Oni in hell. By planting fear in people's hearts, rule was strengthened. The Oni was an excellent political tool for mind control. However, shrines across Japan worship Oni as deities. They were not merely villains, but were believed to be powerful guardians. In some regions, like Mie or Nara, there are customs of welcoming the Oni instead of driving them away. This is evidence that those called Oni actually possessed high skills and knowledge, and contributed to their regions. Though despised as Oni by the authorities, they may have been reliable leaders to the common people they lived with. The warm interactions and the pride of those called Oni truly breathe there. Expanding our perspective, the word Oni was also used for women marginalized by society, as seen in the Hanya mask. There are many stories of women turning into Oni out of deep jealousy or resentment. However, behind this is the sadness of women who were oppressed in a male-centered society without a voice. The reason they had to become Oni might have been a final resistance to protect themselves, or their loved ones from an unreasonable reality. Oni may have been the form of a counterattack by the powerless against society. As we approach the climax, let me share an episode. A legend tells of an Oni and a human falling in love. However, the villagers feared the Oni and eventually cornered him and took his life. The human wife he left behind used the mysterious tools he possessed to bring prosperity to the village. The villagers enjoyed the wealth, while hiding the fact that they had killed the Oni. This story conveys the cruelty of humans, who exclude what is different and the preciousness of a heart that still cares. Weren't the Oni just people like us with blood in their veins, who simply looked different or had a different status? The tears they shed may still be moistening the earth as rain. We were taught to defeat the Oni in stories and live happily ever after. But it is highly likely that those who departed this world at the end of the sword were just nameless. People trying to protect their families and their culture. How much regret must they have felt when they were erased from the stage of history? If that feeling became a grudge or a sad ghost story, we may need to listen to their voices correctly. One last question for you. If someone is called an Oni and is about to be excluded from society today, how would you see that person? Would you join the majority and throw stones without trying to see their truth? It is always the logic of fear and exclusion in our own hearts that creates the Oni. As we enter the ending, the way you see Oni from tomorrow might change a little. When you shout Oni Wasoto during the bean-throwing festival, try to remember the people who were toyed with by history. History is always multifaceted. What is visible is not necessarily the only truth. Behind the justice you believe in, the tragedy of someone who was turned into an Oni might be hidden. If you found this story interesting or thought-provoking, please subscribe to the channel and give us a high rating. Also, if there are Oni legends or mysterious experiences in your hometown, please let us know in the comments. Your comments may become the light that illuminates the truth. See you in the next story. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me tonight. Tonight, I would like to talk about a woman who plunged Japan into the depths of terror during the Showa era. She wears a red coat, has long flowing hair, and covers her face with a large white mask. If you saw her standing at a street corner, what would you do? What if she turned to you and asked in a quiet voice, "Am I pretty?" Today, wearing masks has become a common sight. But there was a time when it was believed that an unimaginable horror was hidden beneath that white fabric. It was 1979, the 54th year of the Showa era. The rumor, which reportedly began in a certain town in Gifu Prefecture, spread across all of Japan in the blink of an eye, robbing children of their peaceful daily lives. Tonight, let us carefully unravel why this existence known as Kuchisake Onna, the slit-mouthed woman, terrified people so deeply, and explore the social anxieties and deep-seated psychology that lay behind the phenomenon. First, let us look back at the feverish commotion of that time. In early 1979, the rumor that began in Gifu did not spread through traditional media like television or newspapers, but through the word of mouth of children, or what we would call a viral explosion today. At dusk, on the way home from school, a tall woman wearing a mask would appear. As she passed by, she would ask, "Am I pretty?" If the person answered that she was pretty, she would slowly remove her mask. Her mouth was torn wide open all the way to her ears. Then she would laugh and ask, "Even now?" while attempting to take the person away from this world with a pair of sharp scissors. Or she might slit the person's mouth to look just like hers. If the person answered that she was not pretty, they would be immediately sent to their end right then and there. It was a terrifying choice with no escape. As this story spread, elementary schools across Japan fell into a state of panic. It reached a point where the police increased. Their patrols and teachers had to lead groups of students home for safety. Do you remember any forbidden games or scary rumors that everyone believed? When you were a child, the rumor of the slit-mouthed woman was more than just a prank. It carried the weight of a significant social phenomenon. Here is my first question for you. If a stranger spoke to you on a dark road at night, would you be able to run away without hesitation? Or would you find yourself answering them politely? What made this commotion even more complex was the spread of specific methods to escape her, or what we might call Gonglu strategies, chanting the word pomade 3 times, or giving her amber sugar candy. These may seem silly from a modern perspective, but for the children of that time, they were the only source of hope. Why pomade? The reasons given were quite detailed, such as the idea that the surgeon who operated on her smelled of pomade, or that she simply hated the scent. The fascinating thing about urban legends is how the details are constantly layered and added upon. What started as a local story in Gifu had evolved by the time it reached Tokyo, even gaining supernatural physical abilities, such as being able to run 100 meters in just a few seconds. This setting of extreme speed seems to symbolize the sense of despair children felt, believing that they could never outrun her if they were chased. Next, I want to focus on why a monster like the slit-mouthed woman was born during this specific period. In the late 1970s, Japan's high economic growth had stabilized, and while society was maturing, new anxieties were beginning to sprout. One of those was the interest in and fear of cosmetic surgery. At the time, surgeries to obtain beauty were becoming more common, but at the same time, people harbored a latent fear of what might happen if the procedure failed. One of the most famous theories regarding her identity is that of a woman who lost her mind after a failed cosmetic surgery. This can be seen as an expression of modern fear that the unknown powers of science and medicine might transform one's appearance into something monstrous. Furthermore, this was a time when the competition for school entrance exams intensified, and children had more frequent occasions to walk the streets at night, to attend cram schools, less time with family, and the fear of walking alone in the dark. The appearance of a distorted woman before these. Lonely children may have been a symbol of the cracks appearing in modern society. Here's my second question for you. In today's society, do you feel a different kind of fear regarding masks compared to the past? Is the anxiety of not being able to see someone's face something that remains constant across different eras? The story of the slit-mouthed woman did not stop within the borders of Japan. Entering the 2000s, this legend crossed the ocean to South Korea, China, and Southeast Asia. In South Korea, she became known as the Red Mask and became a huge hit among children, just as she had in Japan. Interestingly, the story changed slightly in each country to fit the local culture. For example, modern situations were added, such as trying to escape in a taxi, only to find the driver was one of her accomplices. This shows that the motif of the slit-mouthed woman possesses a power that appeals to the fundamental fears of people, regardless of country or culture. Moreover, her existence is very interesting from a folkloric perspective. Since ancient times, Japan has had female monsters like Yama-uba or Yuki-onna, who emerge from mountains or snow to bewilder people. The slit-mouthed woman can be seen as a modern evolution of these traditional monsters, appearing from the gaps between asphalt, telephone poles, and concrete walls of the city. They share the commonality of being beings that stand on the boundary. Instead of the boundary between the mountains and the village, she stands on the boundary between school and home, or between the everyday and the extraordinary. By the way, If you look closely at the newspaper articles from that time, you can see just how seriously this commotion was taken. An article from June 1979 records that in Fukushima Prefecture, there were numerous reports of a woman wandering with scissors, leading to police intervention. In another area, there were stories of young men, starting night watches armed with weapons to catch the slit-mouthed woman. This proves that the rumor had the power to move beyond mere fantasy and shake the actual public order. There is a term called group hysteria, where sharing a single rumor can cause people to take actions that would be unthinkable under normal circumstances. Have you ever witnessed a moment where many people believed the same thing and fell into a panic? A moment where the excitement of the situation outweighed the truth of the information. That itself might be a scarier side of humanity than any monster. Let us approach the climax of the story. Why did the legend of the slit-mouthed woman eventually quiet down? As the summer vacation of 1979 came to an end, the intense commotion receded like the ebbing tide. One theory is that the network of children was fragmented once summer vacation began. However, she did not disappear completely. Since then, she has continued to appear before us, changing her form with each era. With the spread of the internet, new witness testimonies have been shared on forums and social media, and she has been repeatedly featured in movies and animations. The question she asks, "Am I pretty?" This is not just a simple question. It sounds like a lingering irony toward the hunger for validation from others and the obsession with appearance that we constantly hold in modern society. Behind a mask, we can hide our true intentions and play the role we want to be. But when that mask is removed, how will those around us react to the truth revealed there? Perhaps the slit-mouthed woman is an entity that gives form to the ugliness we hide within, and the emotional wounds we cannot show to others. If the doorbell of your house rang tonight, and you saw a woman in a mask standing there through the monitor, and if she quietly asked, "Am I pretty?" what would you answer? Are you prepared to chant pomade? Or would you try to find words that sympathize with her sadness? Urban legends never disappear, even as times change. They hide right next to us, changing their shapes and names. This is because they are born from the anxiety and curiosity within our own hearts. The slit-mouthed woman is an existence that reminds us of the awe of the darkness that we have forgotten in our daily lives. That is all for tonight's story. If this story touched your heart even a little, please subscribe to the channel and give us a high rating. If there are any mysterious rumors whispered around you or scary stories you have actually experienced, please tell us in the comments. Please be very careful on the roads at night. Even if you feel a presence behind you, you must not look back immediately. Well then, let us meet again in the next haunting tale. Good night. Have you ever wished to live forever? Since ancient times, humans have feared the fading of youth and the inevitable end of their journey. We have sought ways to remain young and stay in this world for eternity. While the stories of emperors searching for elixirs of life are well known, there is a chilling legend hidden within Japan about a forbidden food that grants eternal youth to anyone who tastes it. That food is the flesh of a mermaid. But behind the sweet temptation of such a gift lies a loneliness beyond imagination, and a despair that only those who stray from the natural cycle of life can truly understand. Today, we will explore the depths of the mermaid, legends passed down across Japan, and follow the footsteps of those who were haunted by the curse known as immortality. When we think of a mermaid, many of us might imagine a beautiful woman with the tail of a fish, much like the characters in Western fairy tales. However, the mermaids described in ancient Japanese texts were far more unsettling. According to the Nihon Shoki, the oldest official history of Japan, a strange creature appeared in the rivers of the Setsu region during the reign of Empress Suiko. It was said to have a human-like face, but with a mouth like a monkey and rows of tiny, sharp teeth. Its body was covered in shiny scales. Its hands had long claws, and its cry sounded like a human infant screaming in the night. Why would people of the past seek out such a grotesque creature, let alone attempt to consume its flesh? To understand this, we must look at the most famous legend of all, the story of Yaobikuni. This tale comes from the Wakasa region, in what is now Fukui Prefecture. Long ago, a wealthy man was invited to a feast at a mysterious underwater palace. While there, he happened to glimpse something being prepared in the kitchen. It was the meat of a fish with a human face. Terrified, the man hid the meat in his sleeve and pretended to eat. He brought it home, intending to discard it. But his young daughter found the hidden morsel and ate it out of curiosity. From that moment on, her life changed forever. She stopped aging entirely, remaining a beautiful girl in her teens for decades, then centuries. If you were to live for hundreds of years without ever growing old, while everyone you loved passed away before your eyes, could you accept that fate? This young woman married, had children, and built a life, only to watch her husbands and her own children grow old and eventually go to the other side. She saw generation after generation of friends leave this world, while she remained exactly the same. Imagine the weight of 800 years of goodbyes. Eventually, unable to bear the isolation, she became a nun and traveled across the country, teaching the value of life. It is said she finally ended her long journey by entering a state of eternal meditation in a quiet cave. From the perspective of ancient medicine, the flesh of a mermaid was treated with intense interest. During the Edo period, books on pharmacology often listed mermaid bones and meat as a miracle cure for all ailments. For powerful rulers suffering from incurable diseases, the mermaid was not just a monster, but an ultimate medical resource. There are records of obsessed individuals who spent fortunes trying to capture a mermaid to gain a few more years of life. To them, the natural order of life was something to be conquered, no matter the cost. However, not everyone who tasted the mermaid meat found eternal beauty. Some legends speak of individuals whose bodies could not handle the overwhelming life force of the creature. They transformed into hideous monsters or lost their minds, becoming shadows of their former selves. To stop the flow of time within one's own body is to defy the laws of nature, and such an act often demands a terrible price. The meat was either a blessing for the chosen few or a slow-acting poison for everyone else. Why is the theme of immortality so strongly tied to mermaids in Japan? Do you believe that living a long life is the ultimate happiness? Or is life precious precisely because it has an end? In Japanese folklore, mermaids were often omens of storms or great disasters. One creature known as the Jinja was said to predict outbreaks of disease, telling people that only those who looked upon her image would be spared. The mermaid stands at the intersection of human desire, the terror of nature, and the hope for salvation. In modern times, scientists suggest that these mermaids might have been sightings of dugongs, manatees, or rare deep-sea fish like the oarfish. From a distance, it is easy to see how a strange creature could be mistaken for something supernatural. Yet if we examine the mermaid mummies kept in certain Japanese temples, we find something even more deliberate. Many of these mummies are actually craft work, created by sewing the upper body of a monkey to the tail of a large fish. But we shouldn't dismiss these as mere fakes. Why did people go to such great lengths to create them? These objects were a physical manifestation of humanity's desperate longing for life. By praying to a mermaid mummy, people hoped to ward off illness and extend the time they had with their loved ones. These creations were mirrors reflecting both the hope and the fear within the human heart. One temple in Fujinomiya holds a mummy, said to be a mermaid who repented for its sins before Prince Shotoku. It was once a fisherman who took too many lives and was transformed into a monster as punishment. Even here, the mermaid serves as a stern reminder of the consequences of our actions. When we think of immortality, we often focus on the joy of never having to say goodbye to the world. But the path of Yaobikuni was not one of glory. She is said to have planted camellia trees in many of the places she visited. A camellia flower does not lose its petals one by one. It drops its entire head at once, as if it is finished with life in a single moment. Perhaps she watched those flowers and envied them. To her, being the only flower that never falls was not a gift. It was a life sentence in a world that was constantly moving on without her. If you were offered a piece of mermaid flesh today, would you truly be able to eat it? You would never fear sickness again. You could learn every language, witness every scientific breakthrough, and see how the world ends. But in exchange, you could never join your loved ones on their final journey. You would be left behind in a frozen moment of time forever, a stranger to the human experience of growing old. Is that salvation, or is it the most cruel punishment imaginable? Records show that Yaobikuni was not the only one. There are scattered tales of others who tasted the meat, but most of them eventually vanished into the mountains or threw themselves into the sea. Once a person steps outside of time, they no longer have a place in human society. The act of eating a mermaid is the ultimate act of taking life to sustain one's own. Perhaps that weight is simply too much for any human soul to carry. Today, we do not hunt for mermaids, but through technology, we are approaching a kind of immortality. We seek to extend our lives through medicine, and perhaps one day by uploading our minds to machines. These are our modern versions of mermaid flesh. But the legend of Yaobakuni teaches us that the value of life is not found in its length, but in its depth and the connections we make with others who share our limited time. Yaobakuni eventually disappeared, leaving behind only the trees she planted and the stories of her long walk through history. No one knows what she felt at the end of her 800 years. But her legend remains to remind us that life is beautiful because it is fleeting. If she could see us now, would she smile at our attempts to live longer? Or would she look at us with pity? The world is full of mysteries yet to be solved, and the mermaid is one of the most haunting. These legends show us the darkest corners of human desire. How do you choose to face your own life? Some may still dream of the mermaid's gift, but perhaps the greatest gift we have is the ability to grow old and pass our stories to the next generation. Thank you for exploring the dark history of the Japanese mermaid with me today. I hope this story has given you something to think about. If you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, please subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Your support allows us to continue searching for the truth behind the world's most mysterious legends. Until we meet again in the next tale, please cherish the time you have and the light within your own life.